Okay, great. I think I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and more people may join. We do realize that it is a beautiful, beautiful day outside, and so we're expecting that if no one came, that we might have to go out and join everyone else. But we do have people, which is great because we are recording this virtual forum, and it will be posted on our website. So even though if people cannot join us today, we will go ahead and put that on our website for people to view at any time. And I'm really thrilled that you were able to join us today, because any questions you have, we of course, those might be questions that other students have, and we'll try to get, so I'll go through what the format for today will be. So my name is Beth Heisensee. I am an assistant director at International Student Scholar Services. You are now joining us for our second International Student Virtual Forum. So I'm going to go through how the virtual forum is structured and how you can participate in the forum. I'm just going to bring up my notes real quick. So the format of the virtual forum is that we're going to have 30 minutes with panelists and who will be talking about different topics related to the international student experience, your experience. And they'll be and then we're going to do 30 minutes of the panelists, and then we'll have a 30 minutes of open question and answer session for international student questions. So there are two ways in which you can submit a question. The way we would prefer is is to do a chat function. And the reason we do that chat function is because we can record the questions, and later on we can look at what the questions were and review those and use them to put them into our frequently asked question document that is on the ISSS website. The other way that you can ask a question is through the Q&A function, or the question and answer function within Zoom. It is at the bottom and in the middle of the Zoom platform. When you go into it, you can submit a question anonymously. So please go ahead and use that function as well. If you submit a question anonymously, we will. Our tech person will take that question and then copy it into chat, but then that question will not have your name or your ID tied to it. So either one of these will work. So you can do that throughout the session, even as the panelists are talking, and that way we can kind of record what the questions are to specific areas. One thing to note is if your question is very specific to your exact situation, we may not be able to answer. We can only answer more broadly, but if you have a question in which is very specific to your certain situation, we do ask that you go to the ISSS web page, and there's an option to request for someone to call you. So you can complete the phone on the online phone request form, and someone, individual advisor, will call you and give you more information about your question specific to your context. So like I said, this forum will be recorded and it will be posted on our webs page. And just to note, the information that we are providing today is based on what we know at this date and time. And as you know, information is changing rather quickly. So if you view it, let's say a week or 2 weeks from now, information might be out of date by then. But our frequently asked questions document is updated on a daily basis, and old information is removed. So really the frequently asked questions is where we have the most up-to-date information. So based on that, I think we can go and get started. Oh, yes. So I think that's everything. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, feel free to submit a question through chat or through the Q&A function. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the Director of ISSS, Dr. Barbara Kapler.
Thanks, Beth. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you are able to join us for this forum today. There's no question that right now is a time of significant challenge, significant change. We want you to know that we are thinking about you. We're considering the challenges that you're encountering as students here at University of Minnesota. Our staff has worked to provide all of our services while off-site, and we want to make sure you know that you can continue to access us for advising questions, for counseling, and we have a process that's clearly marked on our website. We feel it's clearly marked that you can request, as Beth mentioned, put in a phone request to be contacted, and certainly can email us as well. We want to make sure you know that we're here to address your questions. We know also that this is a time where there has been an increase in bias, there have been an increase in racist acts, and we deeply regret the situation of the United States towards those who live here, towards those who are visiting here, towards those who are studying and working here. Our Dean, Associate Vice President, and Dean for Global Programs and Strategy Alliance, Meredith McHale, has prepared a short video, and we would like to share that with you. It's a message intended to be in support for all of our students.
Hello, students of the University of Minnesota. I'm Meredith McHale. I'm the Associate Vice President and Dean for International Programs for the University of Minnesota system. And I'm here today to tell you that I am very troubled and saddened to hear that members of our university community are experiencing bias and racism related to the COVID-19 outbreak, often because they are or appear to be Asian. I want to be clear that the university condemns all discriminatory behaviors, bias, and racism. This university is committed to creating an inclusive climate for every single one of our community members. I want you to know that we support you as members of our community, and we are here for you in this challenging time. If you believe that you are experiencing discrimination or bias, please contact the Bias Response and Referral Network, and you can do this anonymously if you wish. While the virus may have physically separated us for now, we must not let fear and misinformation separate us further. We really are stronger together, even when we're separated by physical distance. Please take good care of yourselves.
I'd like to echo Meredith's message for everyone to be taking good care. We also acknowledge this is a time of many questions, and so we're going to forge forward with our program. I would like to invite Eric Kretsch, who is our senior counselor with International Student and Scholar Services, to guide us through some important questions that you may have regarding regulation.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I'm getting questions from many students these days about traveling in particular, and it's a pretty common question is, if there's a flight available, can I go home? And when I get that question, I tend to ask people really to consider all of the factors that they can think of right now that might impact their ability to go home. For example, are there flights going to your home country? Will you need to be quarantined after a flight when you arrive in your home country? Are there people in your home country where you would be if you contracted COVID-19 that might possibly be at extra risk because of the transmission of that disease? So a lot of things of that nature. Ultimately, if you ask the question, can I go home? the university really, and ISSS, we support you making the decision that you feel is right for you and regarding your return to your home country for the remainder of the spring 2020 term, for going home for the summer, and who knows what the fall semester brings. So please review the information on the ISSS website that we have the frequently asked questions that have been mentioned so far. And there's some very good information there about traveling and reentering the U.S. I do see some questions coming up from students and scholars regarding travels, and we'll for sure get to those questions later on during this presentation. So another common question that students have is, I want to go home, but my visa will expire. Will I have any trouble returning to the U.S.? And so at this point, what we do know is that many U.S. embassies, U.S. consulates are not taking visa appointments. And we're uncertain when U.S. consulates will resume visa appointments and visa interviews, or if they'll change their policies and procedures and allow there to be meetings via video chat, such as this. It's difficult to say at this point. So what we are thinking though is when things do calm down as far as the pandemic and visa appointments are made available, there's a pretty high probability that lots of people will be applying for visas in a relatively short period of time. And so we expect that probably U.S. consulates abroad will be flooded with visa applications. They may or most likely will not have the staffing available to keep up with those applications. And so there might be delays in processing. It's really difficult to say. So if you're a student whose student or scholar visa, F1, J1, what have you, will expire before the time you plan on re-entering the U.S., just know that there's a little risk involved that you might not be able to easily return to the U.S. simply because of the uncertainty with the visa application process at this time. I guess, and to close on that particular item, we also ask you to go to the website for the particular U.S. consulate where you would apply for a visa and see if they have any updates there, see if there are any specific guidelines for that consulate in that specific country. Some folks have asked about employment authorization, and if people have gone home, or if they can get a flight to return to their home country in the coming weeks, can they apply for practical training or academic training if you happen to be in J1 status from outside of the U.S. And at this point, what we do know is that the U.S. government still expects that students who apply for optional practical training, or OPT, that those people are expected to be physically present inside the U.S. And if an individual does apply for OPT while he or she is outside of the U.S., it's possible that USCIS might deny the application, might not accept it, or they might send you a request for evidence for some sort of proof that you're inside of the U.S. So it's just important to keep that in mind. And it's difficult to know if USCIS, when they receive if they would receive an application from outside the U.S., it's difficult to know what access to certain information they have. It's difficult for us to know if the US government or USCIS knows if you're inside the US or outside of the US. Oftentimes that information isn't clear and transparent in an individual's CVIS record. One thing perhaps to consider would be if you are listening, if you're outside of the US, consider sending your application after you get your new I-20 from ISSS, sending your application materials to a trusted friend or a family member in the US, and have that individual submit those OPT application materials to the US government. I'm not saying by any means that that's a guarantee that you'll get your OPT authorization. It is one idea that I've thought of when we're thinking about ways to get you the authorization that you need going further, and perhaps something that might work for some people in certain situations. So just something to consider. Regarding the CPT and OPT applications and academic training, we're still taking in those applications. Fortunately, the CPT and OPT applications are now online, and you can submit those through your My ISSS account. A common question that we've been getting in recent days, as a lot of organizations and employers are downsizing a little bit, is that students are asking, am I eligible for unemployment insurance? And it's something that we're not 100% sure about. There's a good amount of ambiguity in the answers to that question. So we asked people to seek information on the U.S. Department of Labor's website. We have a link to that website on the ISSS Frequently Asked Questions page. You could also check the state of Minnesota's website about employment. And just because oftentimes the decision about whether somebody is eligible for unemployment benefits, it seems that each state administers its own program, and so the eligibility requirements for unemployment compensation could vary from state to state. So depending on where you're located, it could be different in one place versus another. Another common question that I've received is when students ask, I'm on OPT and my employer plans to give workers leave without pay, or they tell me that I've been furloughed. I'm still on the payroll. I haven't, but I'm not getting my pay. I still might have my health insurance or might not. Does this count as unemployment? And if it counts as unemployment, should I update my CVIS record accordingly? And should I report that as unemployment? And once again, I have to say that this is an ambiguous area, and we recommend that you check in with your employer and ask your employer how they see your appointment with them. Do they consider you to still be an employee? And if they do, it might be a good idea for you to request a letter from your employer stating what they believe your relationship with the employer to be still. And then you have an item of proof indicating that your employer still sees you as an employee there. So in a case like that, then I think we'd recommend that you don't, even though you've been furloughed or that you're still on payroll but not getting paid, we would probably recommend that you don't report that time away from your paid employment as unemployment. Yet another common question is, if I drop a class at this point, Will it impact my visa status? And so when it comes to taking a full course of study for people that are in F1 and J1 status, those people who are students still need to be required for a full course load. And if you need to take less than a full course load for your specific circumstances, if you haven't already been approved by ISSS to have a reduced course load, you'll still need to make sure that you ask for ISSS approval, once again through your My ISSS account, and obtain that approval before you're able to withdraw from a course or courses that you might want to withdraw from. As we know, some people have decided to go home and continue their studies there. So they're physically present outside of the US. And a common question then is, if I'm outside of the US, do I need to still take a full course load to take that full course of study to maintain my F1 or J1 status? And the answer is yes, you really you need to, because even though you're physically present outside of the US, if your goal is to maintain F1 or J1 status, you still have to be taking a full course of study, as I've indicated, even though you're outside of the US. And if you drop courses, if you withdraw from courses and you fall below full time, and you don't have an approved reduced course load request from ISSS, then you would be considered to be not maintaining F1 or J1 status. And then we would have to end your CVIS record. And then in that sort of circumstance, you would need to start up a new CVIS record, request a new I-20 from ISSS to be able to re-enter the US.
Eric, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate to people that if you have more questions related to immigration, please go ahead and put those into the chat or the Q&A section. We will definitely come back to those questions during our open Q&A time.
Great. So I'll just pass things along to our next presenter. That's Mannix and Jessica.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it. My name is Mannix Clark. I work in the Housing and Residential Life Office. And my colleague, Jess, I will transition it to her when I get done talking, and she will tell you a few things. But I just want to give you a quick update on where we're at with students who are living on campus. Right now, all of our facilities on campus and undergraduate student housing is open, or our residence halls and apartments. In addition to our student family properties, all of them are open. If a student wants to stay until the end of the semester, which is May 13th in the halls, they definitely can do that. If they're in one of our apartment buildings, the Radius, Udolph Hall, Wilkins, or Keeler, they can stay until May 31st. And I'll talk about summer here in just a moment. There has been some talk of consolidation, and will we consolidate buildings? That is still a possibility. At this time, there has been no announced consolidation, but there is still some talk to consolidate buildings. As some in our buildings, some of the numbers are getting pretty low, and for various reasons, safety and security reasons, services, it may be necessary at some point to do that. If we do that, we will let students know ahead of time, and we will provide moving assistance and some way so people can get from one location to another location. Also, if we do consolidate in the residence halls, we will put everybody in a private space, so there will be no shared bedrooms at that point as we continue to do that. But if we are doing that, we will definitely be in, we will let you know ahead of time. We will send out information ahead of time and what that process would be. But at this time, no consolidation has been announced. There are some things about health and what happens with health within our buildings. If somebody gets sick, we work very closely with Boynton Health Services, because it's important for us. If somebody does, they contact Boynton. There's a nurse an intake line. That person, they listen to what the students' symptoms may be, and they guide Housing and Residential Life. So Housing and Residential Life does not make that decision if somebody gets sick in one of our facilities on what the kind of next step is. We turn that really over to the medical professionals because they're the best people to advise us on that. And if people have questions later, I'm happy to get into more details with that. In addition, 4 of our residential dining locations are open. Pioneer, 17th Avenue, Bailey, and Middlebrook dining halls are still open. They're still serving students food. If students want to go there to eat, they definitely still can do that. All the information desks are open in our buildings from 8 in the morning till midnight. So students definitely can come and utilize those services available at the desk. Because with COVID-19, some of the services are reduced, but those desks are still open. We're still accepting packages. We're still checking out keys in case students have that, and still providing the information the student may need if there's anything that a student may need with that. We also, if you look on our website, if you log into the main housing webpage, you will see some FAQs about COVID-19. There's a lot of things about on there about what I mentioned as it relates to the Boynton Health Nurse. There's things about refunds. There's things about summer school. So there's a lot of different things that are available on our website, the FAQs right up front there. Summer school, students definitely, if they would like to stay on campus, if there's a reason you can't go home or you want to stay on campus and take advantage of that, you definitely can do that. We have a summer school housing application. Usually students are required to take 1 credit for the summer, but this year we're making an exception for that. So if a student is currently a student in the spring semester or will be a student in the fall semester, they can get an exception. So you can live on campus without being enrolled for, during that time period. So our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to stay on campus and not have to worry about that. And if at some point during the summer you think, hey, everything's right, I'm gonna leave for a little bit, then you'll be able to get out of your housing contract as well to leave and go where you need to go with that. Now I'm gonna turn over to my colleague, Jess Jurdy, and she will update you on what the staff in the halls will be doing to assist you during the process.
Thank you, Mannix. So hello, everyone. My name is Jessica, or Jess Jurdy. I am the new Assistant Director for Social Justice and Inclusion in Housing and Residential Life. And I just wanted to, first of all, kind of introduce myself. I started only a few weeks ago. And my goal is next week to have some office hours to just, be available via Zoom for students who would like to talk to me, get to know me if they have questions or concerns about their experience in the halls, specifically, identity-based, but if there's anything else, going on that you just need to talk to someone, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. Additionally, our live-in staff, so our residence directors, our assistant residence directors, and our CAs are going to be doing some outreach next week to the students who are still living in the buildings, just to sort of figure out what is the experience they're having, what are they looking for, what are the needs in terms of, more programming, whether that's virtual, like movie nights or what have you, but we're trying to get a pulse for what the experience is like for the folks who are still living with us and how we can be creating a better experience, knowing that many of the services that we normally offer in the halls, we are not able to provide right now. So if you hear, from someone from your building, please respond to them. We want to know how you're doing. And if you're not comfortable doing it that way, then please reach out to me directly. I'm happy to support. So with that, I know we'll get to more questions later, but I'm going to pass it over to Carmen McQuitty from Student Legal Services.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everybody. I'm Carmen McQuitty. I'm one of the lawyers at Student Legal Service. And hopefully you already know about what Student Legal Service is. We are your on-campus law firm just for students. We have a staff of attorneys and other legal professionals who can help you. We do some immigration, but not employment-based. We are seeing a lot of cases right now with students who live off campus and are not living in their apartments and are looking to get out of their leases. So that's something we've been helping students with. We help with criminal matters, consumer issues, including scams that I'll talk about here in a minute, and a host of other things. So just so you know, you pay the student service fee, and because you are a student at the U of M and you pay the fee, you get us for free. So you don't have to hire an outside lawyer. We are your lawyers. I will also put in the chat our contact information and all of the resources that I'm going to talk about. So that's a little bit about our office. I wanted to talk about 4 specific legal issues that we see impacting students. The first is scams. We have absolutely seen an uptick in scams for the entire population, but certainly for international students. So this is what I can tell you. If you get a phone call from somebody who is alleging that they're from the government, or even a bank, I would say, and they're requesting information over the phone about they're demanding payment, or they're saying you're late on taxes, or they're going to deport you, or anything like that, and they are requesting money, that's a scam. Nobody from the government, the US government, will ever call you on the phone. And certainly not right now, because everybody is working from home. So nobody will ever do that. I give you permission right now as a lawyer. I'm telling you, you can hang up the phone. You don't have to talk to them. You don't even have to worry about being rude. Just hang up the phone and tell them, don't call me again. I can't stress enough the importance of not giving out any of your information. So don't ever give out your bank numbers, addresses, anything like that. And again, if they're asking for money or demanding money, they're trying to scam you. So what can you do? Number 1, hang up the phone. I recommend contacting ISSS. You could certainly contact Student Legal Service, and UMPD will want to know. The Minnesota Attorney General, he's the head lawyer for our state, is also looking at this issue very seriously. So he has a lot of information on his website as well. So let me turn to the next legal issue that students are grappling with now, and that's the shelter-in-place order that was put on by Governor Walz. And this is the order that basically tells people that we should stay home and we shouldn't be congregating in groups. That doesn't mean you can't still go to the grocery store or can't go on a walk or anything like that. You certainly are allowed to do that. You can, order food from your favorite restaurant and go pick it up. You can do all of those things. We just want to make sure, and the government wants to make sure, that people aren't in large groups together, congregating and spreading the virus. And the reason we want to make sure that doesn't happen is that so our health system doesn't get overwhelmed. I will also put in the comments a link to the Minnesota government's website that talks all about the social distancing rules. So if you're just going about your business, you're not going to be arrested or stopped or anything like that. We have seen a few arrests happen, but what we've seen is that people have been arrested for other things not related to this, and then they just add that charge on. So for you, I'm pretty sure nobody will be in this position, but again, don't congregate in large groups out in public. That's what I'll say. The third issue that we are really helping students a lot with now is if you are contemplating leaving the US, but you still have a lease. You've signed a legal contract and you are on the hook to pay for your lease for the rest of that contract. Some students are now trying to get out of their leases because they want to return home or they're not living in the space. If that's a position you're in or you want to explore that, please contact Student Legal Service. We're trying to help students navigate that. But just know that if you leave and walk away from your apartment, you're still on the hook to pay for until the end of your lease. And that also goes if you've signed a lease for the fall. That's a legal contract, and they can take you to court for that. They could also report that on your credit. But contact us, we can talk more about your specifics. The fourth thing is often students and the university comes to Student Legal Service for notary services. We are operating completely online right now. So we are all working from our homes. We do not have an in-person notary anymore, which has left a lot of people without an on-campus notary service. I will put in the comments some options in terms of virtual notary, and I also know that some banks are doing notary as well still that are open. You might hear some information about student service fees being refunded. Don't worry about any refunds impacting your ability to still access our services at Student Legal Service. We are fully up and running and here to help you. So if you have a legal issue or any questions I can answer for you or anybody on our staff, you can email us at usls.umn.edu, and I'll also put that in the chat right now. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Beth.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. So now we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions through the, again, you can put your questions into the chat feature or into the Q&A, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Teresa, who's going to ask the first immigration question. Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay, so the first question is, if I'm going back home, do I need to get a travel signature? And if I do, how should I get this travel signature? So that's for Eric.
Right. Thank you, Teresa. So to be able to legally re-enter the U.S. for sure on your I-20 or your DS 2019, you're going to need a travel signature. And remember that for the majority of students who haven't completed your degree yet, the travel signature is valid for 12 months. If you're on OPT, optional practical training, the travel signature is only valid for 6 months. So have a look at your current I-20. If you need a travel signature, we unfortunately can't give you a travel signature on your current I-20, but what we can do is issue a new I-20 for you with a travel signature. And so the process for that is to go to your My ISSS account on the ISSS website and follow the prompts there to request a travel I-20. And on that travel I-20, we'll provide you with the travel signature. And then you can request to have that I-20 sent to you via US Postal Service mail, or you could pay a little extra to have the I-20 sent to you via express mail. And we can send I-20s via express mail outside of the US if that's needed as well.
Great, thank you, Eric. So I have a question for I think it's on-campus housing, which is a student had mentioned that their embassy is asking students to return to the country, and what advice do you have, Mannix, regarding on-campus housing?
You know, I'm going to also put my contact information in the chat and may have that person, because each case may be a little bit different. It sounds like you live in one of the cooperatives, which is the CTC or Como Student Community. Their process is a little bit different than the traditional on-campus process. Today, they require a 60-day notice for any change to that. However, I don't know if they're doing anything different during this time. So I would like to be able to reach out and get back to you. But today, it would be a 60-day notice. But I also, I'll put my contact information there. If you send me an email, I will make sure I get it to the right person. They get back to you tomorrow with an update on that.
Great. Thank you, Mannix.
Okay, we've got another question for Eric. What are the limits for the number of hours for someone on OPT? And can we have multiple paid jobs related to our majors while we're on OPT?
Sure. Thanks for that question. And if somebody is on post-completion OPT, which 99.9% of students on OPT are, then they have full-time employment authorization, and there's no limit to that full-time employment authorization. And so if somebody is interested in working in multiple jobs, that individual can do so. You just have to remember with any OPT or CPT job for that matter, the job has to be in your major field of study. And if you're not sure if the job is in your major field of study, you could consult with an ISSS advisor about that. You might want to ask, you could ask your academic advisor via email or a phone call to get, or perhaps even a professor to get some input on whether the job is in your major field of study. I think that covers it.
One other question here, Eric. Is there any delay in ISSS's processing of CPT applications? And how are students receiving their documents now during this time when the advisors are working remotely?
Yeah, there is no delay on the part of ISSS in providing CPT authorization for students. Once a student submits a completed CPT authorization or a CPT application through their My ISSS account, the authorization will be provided on a new I-20 for that student within 7 business days. Then the I-20 will be sent at the student's request to an address in the US, most likely via US Postal Service mail. If the student needs to get that I-20 quicker, just simply wants it quicker for some reason, the student can pay extra to have the I-20 shipped to them either via FedEx or DHL.
Thanks, Eric. We don't have any non-immigration related questions, so I'll go ahead and have Teresa keep asking the immigration related questions. And of course, if you have questions that are non-immigration related, we can try to answer those as well. Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay. This next one is about whether or not USCIS needs additional time to process OPT applications. And should I apply more than 90 days before my degree completion? For example, if I'm going to graduate August 31st, can I apply now?
Sure. So regarding the adjudication of OPT applications by USCIS, we don't have any evidence that I know of one way or another if it's taking USCIS a longer or shorter period of time to authorize OPT. I think in our current environment, it's relatively safe to think it could take a little bit longer, especially now, right now, through the summer is a really high application time when many students across the US are applying for OPT. And it's my understanding that the number of USCIS adjudicators is not increased during that busy time. So it's reasonable, I think, to expect that it might take a little longer during the summer. Now, how long is going to take? It's just difficult to say. You know, I have heard of a few students here and there, mind you, a very few, getting their OPT in less than 2 months. I've heard of others getting their OPT approved in over 4 months. But for me, based on my experience, if you look at the distribution of OPT as kind of a bell curve, I would put the top of that curve, so the mean or the average, at about maybe 3 months and two weeks, something right around there. And that's just based on my experience. And at this point, I don't see any deviation from that at all. But as we know, we're in uncertain times. That's certainly subject to change. Regarding the second half of that question, should an applicant submit an OPT application to USCIS more than 90 days before the new I-20 program end date that the student requested as part of the OPT application? And the answer is definitely not. Your OPT, if USCIS receives your OPT application more than 90 days before your I-20 program end date, the probability of your OPT being denied is about as close to 100% as possible. And I just worked with a student last week who was in that exact situation. The student, we weren't careful enough in making sure the USCIS received the OPT application within that 90-day period. USCIS received it too early, and sure enough, the application was denied. And now, fortunately, we were able to get a new I-20 for that student pretty quickly, and the student has once again applied for OPT.
Okay, the last question that I have here, Eric, is a student asking if they can take grad 999 during this next academic year, so fall and spring, and finish up their degree from their home country.
So to the best of my knowledge, grad 999 is still available as an option. There are several things to keep in mind if you're contemplating registering only for grad 999. The first thing is you have to contact your academic department and see if they will allow grad 999 registration for more than one semester. I know of some departments in particular that will only allow it for one semester. So you'll want to find out what the specific rule is for your department. The second thing is to remember about maintaining F1 status. And so I guess another question for this individual to think about is, even though you're outside of the US, do you plan to continue maintaining F1 status? Because you can do that at this point under the current rules that have been relaxed by the US government a little bit when it comes to maintaining a full course of study while you're outside of the US. So if somebody is interested, for example, in applying for OPT, but you're going to be outside of the US for maybe a semester or two, then at this point, if you want to continue to maintain your eligibility for OPT, not only would you need to register for grad 999 to maintain your active standing in the graduate school, but you also would need to submit an ISSS reduced course load request through your My ISSS account, and you would need to have that approved by an ISSS advisor. Then at that point, you would be maintaining what we call a full course of study, not a full course load, but kind of the equivalent of a full course load when viewed by the US government. Any other questions there, Teresa?
That was the last immigration question, and I don't think any other questions came in either. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Well, great. So I just want to give a special thanks to our guests today from Housing and Residential Life, Mannix and Jessica, and for joining us. We know that you got to hear a little bit of immigration and all of this, but housing is certainly a very important part of students' lives, and obviously a foundational part of the experience at the University of Minnesota is living in housing. So thank you both very much for taking your time to be with us. And Carmen, I also want to thank you from Student Legal Services for sharing what you're seeing within your office. And certainly we want to get the messages out to other students so they know how to approach different scenarios, as well as when to contact Student Legal Services and the fact that you're able to support them. But I'm going to hand it, and the closing will be done by Barbara Kapler, and she'll share a few last words, and then we will leave you to some sunshine. Go ahead, Barbara, will you want to go ahead and wrap it up for us?
I do, although I do see we have another OPT question. Maybe this was already addressed, but just in case.
Okay, well, how about we do it quick and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yes.
Perfect. Go ahead, Teresa, jump on in. You have to turn on your mic.
I don't see the question.
Oh, well, then I shall ask it. How about that?
That's
It's regarding, Eric, this is about, Eric or Teresa, this is about professional students, school students. What if a school cannot confer the degree in May as planned? Will that affect the eligibility for OPT? Tricky question. Can you give us your thoughts?
Well, I'll start, and Teresa, please jump in if you have any thoughts about this. I think it depends upon the professional school and what the degree requirements are. Like for the law school, I think you would still have your same date of degree completion. I'm thinking about that this person perhaps maybe is a School of Dentistry student and maybe has some a requirement to have some training with patients perhaps, and maybe that you haven't been able to complete all of your requirements for your degree in that case. And then I think I would defer to your academic, I would contact your academic advisor or program coordinator to get their input on what they believe would be your date of degree completion. And then once you have that information, consult with an ISSS advisor to see if we can work together on coming up with a date of degree completion that seems to make the most sense for everybody concerned. What do you think, Teresa?
I would agree, Eric. I think there's a lot of information that we don't know about this student. And so making sure that the student checks with the program, is clear about what the things are that remain for the student to take care of as far as their degree requirements, and then coming to have a conversation with an ISSS advisor, I think would be the best action to take.
I think we'll take this last question, and then I'm going to take one. This is our final question, and then we're going to have Barbara wrap it up, because then we will be right on time. Go ahead, Teresa. Do you see the question, or should I ask it? Okay, go ahead and unmute, and you can ask.
All right. So, Eric, this question is, where can we get the passport photo to apply for the EAD? The passport office at the University of Minnesota is closed now.
Right, and they're at some U.S. Pharmacies like CVS, Walgreens, and so forth. Oftentimes at those stores, they do passport photo issuance. So my recommendation would be phone a pharmacy that's close to you, probably one of the chain pharmacies like CVS or Walgreens versus an independent pharmacy. The independent pharmacy, my guess is, probably doesn't do passport photos, but a national chain sort of store probably will. And just ask them if they're still providing those photos. And then after you get the photos, make sure they meet the specifications that the U.S. government has, for example, being 2 inches square, and that they're color photos and that your face is looking straight ahead.
Greatly appreciate everyone's expertise. Enormous regulation questions to passport photos. Great deal of specialty. Thank you. As we wrap up, want to share with everyone that Boynton does have an update on their website. This is information that Blue Cross Blue Shield for the state of Minnesota will cover COVID-19 testing and treatment. So for those of you seeking more information about that, as well as services regarding your medical insurance, please go directly to the Boynton website. I believe this is really good news for the state of Minnesota. I want to echo what Carmen discussed regarding the stay-at-home order, that we are highly encouraging you to be able to get outside, get some fresh air. Maybe if there's a time when you're feeling uncomfortable going outside, open those windows, get that freshness in. I think for our psyche and health, that can be really very, very positive. Again, thank you to everybody at ISSS for all you're doing. Thank you to the whole team that's here today, both for setting up this format and for addressing questions. And as we sign off, please take good care. Know that we are here thinking about you and working to make this experience something we get through together, and we get through as well as we can. Thank you.